Coronation Street spoilers tease that Lou's desperate escape from Maria's grasp is just the start of the chaos to come. The day began under a grim shadow. Maria, still dressed in the same clothes she had worn the day before, sat by Gary's hospital bed. Tubes ran from his arms and machines beeped steadily, reminders of how close he had come to death. She had barely slept, her thoughts consumed with questions that wouldn't settle. Gary had been attacked, left unconscious in an alley, and nobody had seen anything. Or so it seemed. Then came Lou. Lou had arrived at the salon earlier that morning, face pale but calm, voice trembling ever so slightly as she asked about Gary. Maria had been suspicious from the start. Her gut told her something was off. Lou had appeared too quickly after Gary's injury, her presence too convenient, and her concern too well performed. But Lou had an answer for everything, and Maria, exhausted and desperate, had allowed her to stay. The confrontation had started subtly. A misplaced glance, a nervous laugh, and then a moment of silence where Maria caught Lou staring too long at Gary's coat folded on the chair. There was something in Lou's eyes, a flicker of guilt, a shadow of triumph. Maria couldn't tell. But the feeling in her chest hardened. Back in the hospital, the nurse had stepped in to check on Gary. As she adjusted the drip, Gary stirred. Maria shot up from her seat, heart pounding. His eyes fluttered, then opened, dazed and searching. "Gary," she whispered. His gaze met hers, but there was no recognition. "It's me, Maria." He blinked slowly, his brow furrowing. The nurse placed a comforting hand on Maria's shoulder. "He's awake, but memory loss can be common after trauma. Give him time." Outside the hospital room, Maria paced, phone clutched in her hand. She called David. Her voice trembled as she relayed everything. Gary was awake, but confused. Lou had been hovering, odd and unsettled. "She knows something, David. I can feel it." David, already on edge after days of uncertainty, didn't hesitate. He headed straight for the salon. Meanwhile, Lou had slipped away from the hospital and made a detour. She found herself near Roy's Rolls, where she spotted Nina and Summer in quiet conversation. She ducked behind a planter, close enough to catch fragments of their dialogue. Nina, fiddling nervously with her sleeves, whispered, "It doesn't make sense. Gary's bank card. In Summer's pocket. She never even saw him." Summer replied, confused, "It must be a mistake. But the officer said they found it during a routine check." Lou's ears perked. This was her chance. She had planted Gary's card in Summer's coat the night before, right after staging the attack. It was a gamble, but now it was paying off. Quietly, she turned away, and sent an anonymous message to the police tip line. Suspicious behavior related to the Gary Winders incident. Names, Summer and Nina. She smiled. As Maria returned to the salon to collect a few things, Lou was already there, sipping tea like nothing had happened. Maria, straining to appear calm, offered Lou a slice of carrot cake. She placed it gently beside her, noticing how Lou's hands trembled as she picked up the fork. "So where did you go earlier?" Maria asked casually. "Just a walk," Lou responded too quickly. Maria nodded, her expression unreadable. "It's strange. Gary's coat, the pockets were empty yesterday. But now they say they found his bank card in Summer's coat." Lou's eyes widened. "Summer? That's odd. Isn't it?" Maria replied, studying her. Before Lou could formulate another excuse, the salon door opened with force. David entered, his face grim. He locked eyes with Lou. "We need to talk." Lou tried to stand, but Maria placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Please, stay. Finish your cake." Before she could respond, Maria's phone buzzed. She picked it up and listened. Her eyes widened. The police want to speak to Summer and Nina. Someone made an anonymous report. Lou's smile faltered. You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you? David asked, folding his arms. Of course not. Lou said, a little too forcefully. As the tension rose, footsteps echoed outside. Moments later, 2 uniformed officers appeared at the door. Louisa Kinley. We need to speak with you. Maria's expression changed to something close to triumph. We had a few questions after all, the officer continued. About your whereabouts the night of Gary Windus' assault. Lou froze. Her escape route was blocked. Her carefully constructed story was beginning to collapse. David watched her with a mix of disappointment and restrained fury. Maria, standing tall, held her gaze. You should have run when you had the chance, she whispered. But Lou didn't move. She was caught. As the officers led her out of the salon, the street fell into a quiet hush. Onlookers stared. Maria stood in the doorway, arms crossed. She wasn't smiling. There was too much damage done. Back at the hospital, Gary's memory remained fragmented. He spoke little, each sentence an effort. But when Maria returned, he looked at her with a little more clarity. I saw something, he said softly. Maria leaned in. What did you see? He shook his head. A face. A woman. But, it's blurry. Maria clasped his hand. You don't have to force it. Just rest. Outside his room, she made another call. This time to D.S. Swain. You need to dig into Louisa Kinley. She's not who she says she is. Far across the cobbled street, Nina and Summer sat side by side on the police station bench, silent and pale. A detective walked past with Gary's bank card sealed in evidence plastic. It had their fingerprints on it. But that wasn't the damning part. It was the tip-off. Anonymous. Orchestrated. Deliberate. Lou's plan had been brilliant in its simplicity. Divert suspicion, eliminate evidence, and let 2 vulnerable young women take the fall. But Maria had seen through her. Just in time. And the street had witnessed it all. Down at the Weatherfield police station, Nina sat with her arms crossed, the fluorescent lights above flickering, amplifying the tension in the room. Summer sat beside her, fidgeting with the hem of her cardigan, her eyes red from suppressed tears. Both girls were reeling from the shock. How had Gary's bank card ended up in Summer's coat? Why had the police received an anonymous report implicating them? Nothing made sense. Detective Sergeant Swain stepped into the room, carrying a file. Her expression was neutral, but the weight of suspicion hung thick in the air. We received a tip that connects you 2 to the attack on Gary Windus, she began. And this card being in your possession doesn't help. Nina's voice trembled with restrained fury. It wasn't there before. Someone planted it. You have to believe us. Summer nodded, her voice barely a whisper. I don't know how it got there. I swear. Swain remained impassive. We'll need a formal statement from both of you. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Gary lay awake, still groggy, but the fragments of memory were starting to resurface. He struggled to make sense of images that darted across his mind, the dim alley, footsteps behind him, a flash of metal, and then a woman's voice. The voice was familiar, urgent, and somehow wrong. He couldn't place it yet, but it lingered like a splinter beneath the skin. Maria returned to his bedside, her face weary but resolute. She sat down and gently squeezed his hand. Gary, listen to me. Lou's been arrested. She was hiding something, and I think she tried to frame Nina and Summer. He blinked, then slowly nodded. That voice, it might have been hers. I can't remember for sure. But it feels right. Maria stood, pacing. You need to remember. The sooner we can prove she was involved, the sooner we can clear Nina and Summer. Back in the interview room, DS Swain received a message and excused herself. It was an update from the officers handling Louisa Kinley. The woman was unraveling quickly under pressure. Though she had initially denied involvement, inconsistencies in her story were emerging. Her alibi for the night of the assault had crumbled under scrutiny, and when confronted with CCTV footage placing her near the alley, she faltered. At the same time, David received a visit from one of the detectives. He had been quiet since Lou's arrest, haunted by his initial trust in her. He paced his living room, running a hand through his hair as he recounted every detail of their conversation. She kept saying how unfortunate Gary's situation was. Over and over. Too rehearsed. And she knew about the card before it was even mentioned publicly. I didn't see it then. I do now. The detective nodded, taking notes. Anything else you recall could be useful. We believe Lou tried to stage the attack to appear as a random mugging gone wrong, and then shift the blame to Summer and Nina. Why them? David asked. We think she overheard a conversation between them and used that information to create a believable misdirection. It's calculated. Maria, returning to the salon briefly to check in with David, found him visibly shaken. I let her in, he admitted. I believed her. If you hadn't noticed her twitchiness. Maria shook her head. This isn't on you. She fooled a lot of people. But the truth's coming out. That evening, Summer and Nina were released from the station. They walked silently through the cobbles, the weight of suspicion still lingering, but the pressure beginning to lift. I knew something was wrong the moment I saw that card, Nina said. I just didn't know someone could be so cruel. Summer looked up at the sky, the stars barely visible through the clouds. Do you think she did it because she hated Gary? Or us? Maybe both, Nina replied. Or maybe she just wanted control. At the same time, Lou sat in a holding cell, head in her hands. Her plan, which had seemed airtight, had begun to unravel with frightening speed. She hadn't anticipated Maria's stubborn intuition, or Gary regaining his memory so quickly. She certainly hadn't expected the police to move so fast. Detective Swain re-entered the room. Louisa, you're looking at multiple charges: obstruction, false reporting, possibly attempted murder depending on how Gary's injuries are categorized. You might want to start cooperating. Lou lifted her head slowly. Her expression was blank, but there was a flash of desperation in her eyes. He wasn't supposed to wake up. Swain's expression didn't change. But he did. And he remembers more than you think. Back at the hospital, Gary lay in a semidoze, images swirling in his mind. Suddenly, he sat upright. Maria, still nearby, rushed over. What is it? His voice was hoarse. She said something before she hit me. Something weird. Like you always ruin everything for me. Maria blinked. What does that mean? Did you know her before? Gary shook his head. I don't think so. But maybe she knew me. Maybe from when I worked in security. Or before that. Maria turned to her phone, determined to dig into Lou's past. If Lou had a history with Gary, it could explain her motives. She made a call to one of Gary's old security firm contacts. Do you remember a Louisa Kinley? She might have been involved in one of your old gigs. Anything suspicious? Check your records. The next morning brought answers. Gary's contact called back. Louisa had once been involved in a case Gary helped resolve years ago, an internal theft at a corporate site. She had been dismissed quietly to avoid scandal. She must have held a grudge. It all started to make sense. Maria immediately informed the police. With this connection established, motive was now clear. DS Swain pushed Lou further. You went after Gary, because he cost you your job years ago. And when you saw an opportunity to hit back, you took it. Didn't you? Lou's silence was answer enough. With Gary's recovery progressing, and Lou's arrest assured, attention turned back to Nina and Summer. Though they were free, their names remained entangled in the gossip swirling around the Rovers and Roy's roles. Maria, wanting to set the record straight, organized a brief press statement outside the salon. Louisa Kinley acted alone. She manipulated the evidence and falsely implicated two innocent young women. Gary is recovering, and we're grateful for everyone's support. Nina and Summer stood beside her, relieved yet still emotionally drained. Later that night, Maria sat beside Gary, holding his hand. You're lucky to be alive. I know, he whispered. Because you never gave up. Outside, rain began to fall gently on the cobbles, washing away the remnants of the chaos Lou had stirred. But inside every Weatherfield resident lingered a lesson, that trust is fragile, truth takes time, and sometimes the biggest threats wear the friendliest faces.